maybe we'll just give it a minute. So,
Okay, got it. Got the recording started, so you can take it away. And if there's something that people missed, then they can watch the YouTube video. That's
perfect. Well, welcome everybody. My name's Brandon Gilbert. My wife and my wife's name is Barb Gilbert. Um, we own the FiiZ drinks here in Pickerington, Ohio. So we are one of the franchises here in the East Coast, and kind of one that really started, I guess, the process of having FiiZ uh, past the Mississippi. So prior to us opening, um, really soda shops don't really exist in the East Coast like this. So it's kind of a new thing out here, and we're kind of opening up the market and getting people used to the idea of crafted sodas. So a little background. My wife and I opened our shop in February of 2023. That was our opening day, was the 23rd of February. And we did a kind of a friends and family night that night. And then the 24th is when we actually started real business with our community. So we've been doing it a little over a year and a half now. We're getting closer and closer to hitting our second year mark. Um, Prior to that, we actually touched base with FiiZ Corporate um, really over a year before that. We were interested in opening a shop, and at the time, the first thing they said is, "Well, you need to go look for a location, and it needs to have a drive-through." And that proved to be quite challenging to find a shop available in our area that could support a drive-through and run the business out of. So we took a full year, um, first looking for a shop that we could lease. That didn't pan out to anything, and so we ended up buying a small little diner here in our community and taking a year to renovate that and have it ready to go so that we can open in 2023. Um, so the background of kind of what drew us into this, I have friends that have family out in Utah area, and what he, I was doing financial analytics for a corporation and was not enjoying my job anymore. And so I'd been looking for new opportunities, something else to do. And this friend came back from a trip out to Utah, and he said, "You know what you really should do is look into opening one of these soda shops." He's like, out there, out in Utah, he's like, every one of them have lines in the drive-through. They're always busy. It's a fun thing to do. So my wife and I started looking into like what it would take to actually have that come to fruition. So we had a quick meeting, much probably like you guys have had, where you talk with the franchise. They give you some background on what's going to be required, and then they look at your market as well and say, "Okay, tell us a little bit about your market." So we went through that process and figured out, basically shared with them that here's our neighborhood. This is kind of what the demographic looks like, what the income levels look like, and it seemed to match up pretty well. So with that, that started the ball rolling of us kind of looking to open the shop and get things in line. So what starting out, so I'm just going to give you a little background, and then I'd rather do more of a question and answer than really just sit here and talk to you guys. I'd rather answer your questions about things. Um, so some of the background that we had, being that we were really the first one this far east. Shortly after us, one of the shops in North Carolina opened up. So we do at least have a partner out here on the East Coast that we can kind of work things out with and see if more success doing things a certain way as opposed to another. But with that brought some challenges. The biggest challenge that I can say, we're still working through is the idea of supply chain. You know, the majority of our brand is out along the Rocky Mountains. And so that creates a great situation for all those stores that there's buying power there, there's, sharing of resources, things like that. So that makes it easy to get the products you need, the paper goods, the soda goods. Here in the East Coast, since we're one of two, and at the time one, that was kind of a big step. Is like, okay, how do you get your cups, your branded FiiZ cups? How do you have those in your local Cisco? Um, so that was a bit of a growing process of working through that with the corporate team, figuring out how to get cups over here and getting started. The good news is we've gone through that. We've been doing it for over a year now, and we're getting better at it as a corporation of being able to be in some of these new markets and being able to get the supplies that you need to your store without too much pain in doing that. So that's the good thing is you guys coming in got the benefit of us kind of working through this and sweating it out for the last year. Um, but that's the challenge if you're in one of these remote markets is really hammering in getting your supply chain to function smoothly, to keep from breaking down, to make sure that your store has products available, 24/7, every day that you want to stay open. So that will be where you'll spend quite a bit of your time if you're in a new market of just getting all those relationships established and ironed out and getting things running smoothly. Part of our process too, being that we were in a new market, was getting the concept of these crafted sodas into the market. Like people out here weren't familiar with it a lot. Um, some of them had seen it on social media where they were seeing different, people mixing syrups and creams and things into their sodas. So mostly these kind of influencers, they saw it on TikToks, they saw it on um, Instagram, things like that. So as we opened, that sort of opened the door a little bit, but for the most part, we had to try to get the community to understand what it is they were looking at. Some people came in thinking that it was we were mixing alcoholic drinks. So you got to like correct that. Like, nope, we're a soda shop. It's kind of a modern version of the old-fashioned soda shop, and then get them familiar with the drinks and kind of get them trying new things. Um, so that's an ongoing process. It's really kind of a building process. We continue to build in our community of getting people familiar with it. Even today, we have new customers come in all the time. Like, oh, I've never been before. Tell me about it. Show me, how do I pick a drink? Um, so that's really kind of an ongoing process as we continue to kind of gain traction here in Ohio. Um, the way I mentioned to Justin when we were chatting is out west, because it's so established and there's so many, not only of our brand but other brands. You can go in as somebody purchasing a franchise and kind of go in more with an investor's mindset where you don't have to put in the effort of establishing the concept and getting kind of the network set up and collecting customers, per se, to the idea. Out here, it's more, or I guess I would say, I'm not sure where everybody's at, but if you're in a remote market, the concept is more kind of like a startup where you're doing a small business startup. So it's going to take that extra effort to get not only the business side of it established, but also the customer side of it established. So it's going to take some time. And that's what I would, I guess, encourage everybody that's getting started is to have that mindset of it's going to take some time and patience to let your business grow. And if you go in with that understanding, like, okay, year one might not be the most profitable thing that you've ever started. Um, but if you stick with it and you have kind of that okay, we know that this is going to function, it's a proven concept. We just need to kind of set ourselves up to kind of grow year over year. It will become a business that is very profitable and very rewarding. Um, so that's where I'm kind of leave it for now. Just a little background and that kind of little pep talk there of kind of new interest or new joiners here that are interested in joining the FiiZ franchise. But let me put it out there. I see some hands going up. Let's take some questions. So I see Joe. Joe, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, thanks for sharing your experiences and um, advice and everything. So, one question I had, since you were talking about products, like, do you have a rough estimate of what your monthly supply costs are?
So I have my wife here. She runs a lot more of the paying of the bills. So we order and do inventory together, but she makes sure that it all gets paid for. So
Um,
I would,
2 to 3.
that's from Cisco, right?
No, that's Pepsi and Farmer Brothers and or Nestle. Um,
I would say probably in that 3,000 range. Um,
maybe
in the summer, probably a little more. Summer is a busier time for people to, be out of school and wanting to do extra things. Um,
probably 3,500 median.
All right. Yeah, that sounds great.
so now, as I guess to build on that, it really will depend on your volume, right? So if you're selling a lot of sodas, then you're going to go through a lot more paper products. You're going to go
Right. Yeah.
through a lot more soda bibs, things like that. Um, so, but the biggest thing is kind of setting that initial set of inventory up, because I believe that they told us to kind of set aside about 10 grand to kind of collect all your syrups and your soda bibs and your frozen goods and kind of get the bulk of those products set in place. And then really what you're doing week over week is just replenishing where you've used for that week.
Because I think they had us get initially at least 2 weeks worth of product. And that way, when you had that first week, which is depending on where you are and how hyped up people are for you to open, might be busier than you expect.
Yeah, definitely. So that 3,500 is a month, right?
Roughly, yeah.
Okay.
Some weeks will be higher. Yes, that's what he's asking.
Oh, no, that's Cisco a week is 1 to 2.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. So sorry,
Okay.
I was thinking per week.
So yeah, you're gonna multiply that by four. So you're really looking at probably anywhere from 8,000 to probably 12,000 um month over month, depending on if you're in the summer month, it's probably going to be more up in the 12. And if it's in the winter month, you're going to be, 8. You're going to be doing a couple thousand a week in soda bibs, syrups, frozen goods, paper products, etc. So, and to kind of build on that idea of the first month, you're gonna load up all your inventory, and the community, hopefully, they will be watching you get ready to open. And those first couple months, they're gonna come like heavy. They're gonna come. They want to try it out. They're gonna come back. They're gonna spend more money than they thought they should. Um, and then it will slowly start to normalize. And then with that, you'll get into more of a rhythm of like, okay, we don't need to order as much as we were that first month because sales are starting to normalize a little more. So be ready for that. That it will don't be concerned that things slow down in month 3 because that's normal. People have finally, the craze has gone down a little bit and they're trying to like figure out how to go to your shop all the time. So I saw Tara, it looks like you were the next one that had a question.
Yeah, so just my question is kind of following up on that 8 to 12 a month, 12,000 a month and cost of goods or whatever. What kind of like sales does that go off of then, I guess? What quarterly, like what are we or weekly or whatever we're looking at? So if that's
Right.
your cost of goods, I mean, are you comfortable sharing that, like an average of what
Sure.
that might be?
Yeah, when we first started, the high month, so the first month, I think we did 40,000. The second month was like 50,000 in sales. That was our high month. Like I said, there's a kind of a craze that went through, and then it'll slow down and it'll start to normalize. So for our first year, normal going through winter was like more like 25,000. And then going into summer, we were in the 40s, um, the 40,000 to 44,000. So that's what you're kind of looking at. Now, what I would, if what we did when we first started was we asked the corporate team to put together a P&L for us. And so what they did is they took some of the franchises, they masked their data, kind of blended it in among some of those different, so that there were like 4 or 5 different shops, but you couldn't tell whose was whose. And then it gave you an average of what that looked like for a well-performing shop. Something they obviously they don't take the low end and show you what the struggling stores do. They take kind of the better shops, but it gives you an idea of like, okay, I don't want to be a struggling shop. I want to be a good shop. It gives you an idea of kind of what benchmarks look like and how to gauge your business, how close you are to a well-performing store. So I would advise you to do that. I don't know who Justin is able to kind of provide that type of stuff, but when we did it, that's what we were able to get. It was a kind of a blended P&L from the brand. So did that answer your question, Tara?
It did. Thank you very much. I appreciate your sharing that.
Yeah. So yeah, over time, you'll have dips, you'll have lows where it's in that, 20 something thousand. Um, and then summers will be kind of where you really kind of make great headway. Um, it also depends on your community. Our community loves to eat ice cream in the middle of winter here in Ohio. So it slows, but it's not like people are like, oh, it's too cold to go out and have a soda. They'll still continue to buy. So we've had a really strong second year going through summer. So our sales are up probably 10% from where we were last year. So we're seeing kind of that growth of maturing inside a market, becoming more known among the population here. So Eric, it looks like you might have been the second one to raise your hand. You had a question?
Yeah, Brandon, thank you. So I was going to ask you, like, how involved are you in the day-to-day business? Are you actually running, in the store, and how many employees you might have? What does a labor overhead look like?
Yeah. So we're probably more the anomaly than the norm, because it's more like a new market and an emerging market and kind of that startup. My wife and I, we are 100% involved in our day-to-day operations, meaning I am working at our shop, actually mixing sodas, the manager on staff, 40 hours a week at my shop. My wife is there almost 30 hours a week as manager too. So when I'm not there, she's on staff. And then I have an older daughter that's 19.
21.
Sorry, 21. She is the third manager of our management team. So one of the three of us is there 100% of the time the business is open. Um, and then when we first started, we hired a number of employees. So we were actually well overstaffed. Um, I think the brand suggests you should hire 30.
That's fine.
At the time, they suggested 30. We found some more information to kind of provide better background on how to gauge how many people you needed. And that gauge in the business documents was you should expect to have one person working for every $65 of sales you have every hour. Once we had that document, it really helped us kind of reevaluate how many people we were having assigned to shifts. We were able to kind of thin down because we spent a lot of money in our first year on labor cost. Labor in Ohio is on the, I would say we're kind of mid-level as far as the minimum wage. At the time, it was $10.15 an hour. We've gone up to $10.45 an hour. So that's quite a bit above what Utah minimum wage is. So we pay a little more, but we also our menu prices are a little higher because we have tiered pricing throughout the brand. So if you're in a higher labor market, you can choose one of those higher tiered prices to help offset some of that labor. But what we had was we were way overstaffed, so we spent a lot of our profits paying our employees. The business was able to sustain it and pay for it, but it didn't bring home a lot of extra, profit at the end of the year. We were more even where we paid for all of our goods, we paid for all of our labor, but it didn't come out the back end of like, and here's a nice little bonus for you at the end of the year. Now this year, because we've used that model better, and at the end of year one for us, going into the beginning of year two, we got our staffing to where we were really working with a nice kind of stable minimum number of people. And that has proven to really make it so that we can function and survive as a brand here in Ohio. So we right now are running around 30, anywhere from the around the low 30s to the mid 30s on our labor cost. I know the brand really is driving to try to get that to 25%, that your labor cost is 25% of your sales. It's pretty hard out here because of our higher um, hourly wage for our employees. But functioning inside of that, kind of that low 30s to mid 30s on your labor cost will produce profit for you that way. It just not as much as if you got it to 25. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Do you currently how many other than the three, yourself, your wife, and your daughter? Do you have other? How many employees do you think you have working right now?
I, I believe we have another 10, like what we'll call staff employees. So the standard, kids that they've hired that we've hired out of the community. A portion of those are some other. I have 4 children, so the oldest one is my co-manager with my wife and I, and then I have 3 other kids that work at the shop for me that are part of my family, and then we have an additional 8 more. Um, so
Okay,
yeah, we right now stable. We have I think 10 to 11 employees plus the 3 managers,
got it.
and
Okay,
that's a pretty tight ship. But the group that we have are super dependable, or at least they have been until they started getting sick here.
Yeah.
Um, so because of that, we can run really tight because we know we can depend on them to be there for the shifts that they signed up. If you're a little bit more unsure of kind of the reliability of the kids that are coming in, then sorry, I got some girls that are getting ready to go to band, so they're making some noise here. I apologize. So if you have staff that's a little like you're unsure how reliable they are, I think that's when the brand is like you really need to try to overstaff with your employees so that you can backfill with one of the other members if somebody calls off or if they become, need to go on vacation, something like that. So right now that 10 number for us is really a very tight number because we know we can depend on them.
awesome. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It looks like Saeed had a question.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, thanks for having me on. My question kind of goes back to what Tara was asking about the COGS. I'm actually in business as well, and I'm in different beverage industries as well. So the COGS is real important to me. I guess I was trying to write down some notes whenever you were bringing up what they were. Do you have any actual percentage? Like, let's just say, for example, your average drink is $5. Like, how much does it cost to make that drink? Or do you have an actual percentage of your COGS?
We do, but not on the sheet that I have up for me. The brand has provided quite a bit of that kind of background. Um, what they really want is that nothing that we sell has a cost that's over 50%. The food for us has better COGS than the drinks, which is surprising. Usually everybody thinks that soda's where all of the profit is. Where in our brand, the food does better, but we sell the food kind of as a companion to the drinks as opposed to a standalone. People can buy it standalone. But I'm gonna say really I don't have the specifics of that as much as the brand would. And so I think Justin will probably need to provide more with the actual specific hogs. Um, but what I can look at while we take some of these others, I'm going to pull up some of my financials and see if I can see just in general.
Okay, while you're doing that, I just had one other question about supply chains. You said you had some issues that first year. I'm in a state also where there's not really that many soda shops, so just kind of like, could you kind of tell me a little bit more, like what's the main products that you were having supply chain issues with?
Sure. So the big one is depending on, I'm not sure where you are, but here in Ohio, a lot of your stuff's going to come through Cisco. Um, Cisco for us is out of Cincinnati, so it's the bottom part of our state. We're in the center. Um, Cisco carries a lot of what we need. They'll carry the Coke syrups, they'll carry the paper products, a lot of the food products. But the one thing that we had a little problem with was they didn't carry the Trani syrups. So that's a big deal because it goes in every one of your drinks. So we had to figure out what do we do there. Luckily, we have a vendor in the north part of the state that specifically deals in Torani syrups and Monin syrups. And they are a distributor for Swig drinks, surprisingly. So we were able to connect with them and start getting um, our syrups through them until we could figure out how to get that at a better price. So the trade-off there was okay, it's local, we can get it on a weekly basis, but it comes at a higher cost per bottle. So that eats into our profits. What has happened over time, over the last year, is the corporate team has worked with Cisco to get us involved with part of their company, which is called Supplies on the Fly. The way I describe it, it's kind of like an Amazon version of Cisco, where you can go online, go through their warehouse. This is the stuff that's available to me for our brand, and then they'll ship it to you instead of on their weekly delivery truck out of Cisco. They send it to you via the mail carriers. UPS is kind of their carrier. So what that's done is that's opened up the pricing that we get through Torani for FiiZ drinks, and we get that through now a distributor that's Cisco. So um, that's helped, but that took time to figure out for a while. If you're familiar with the Torani syrups, they're usually in glass bottles. That Supplies on the Fly team was packaging things, sending it out to us, but because they were in glass bottles and we're talking like 70 bottles of syrup being shipped across the country, a lot of those packages were coming to us and a bottle would break in it and there would be syrup all over. And some sometimes UPS would drop it off with it leaking syrup, and sometimes they're like, it's leaking syrup. So we took the whole box back, and so we would be missing product. What they've done to remedy that situation is they've switched, instead of having the syrups in glass bottles, they've recently switched over to plastic bottles. So that now has fixed some of that issue with what, we no longer have as many of those situations where our product's broken or damaged and getting sent back or not being delivered. So that's fixed the syrup side of things. A few other spots, cups, that's a big thing. We have the branded foam cup, and those are made in other parts of the country and then stored out west in the Intermountain locations. And then they've got to get them to us in these other locations. And so what had to happen in the past was a huge, they kind of bulk shipped a whole bunch of each of the sizes to your local Cisco. They store them there, and then you use it throughout, your cycle until you run out, and then they'll refill it. Well, that's not a great process. You got to get a whole bunch of cups to a spot, and then you may go through a bunch of one size and not as many as another. So what the brand has worked with, same thing, using supplies on the fly, they now carry those cups to where you can get, a small batch on a weekly basis shipped to you. There's not this extra shipping charge. It's already built into their pricing. So that has now improved to where we're getting those paper cups, I guess the styrofoam cups, sent to us via that process. So that has improved. Is there any other, just sorry, I'm talking to my wife, any other distribution problems that we experienced that has improved? So you'll work with Coke, you'll work with Pepsi, though you should have local distributors, local bottlers. Coke probably can come. I think we have a national contract, so Coke will come through Cisco, so they'll supply it to you. I guess that's probably the biggest thing is figuring out where your Cisco is inside your area. If it's close, you're going to have a lot better process. Like our Cisco is 2 hours away. So if something's missing on the truck, or if you run out of something unexpectedly, or if something's damaged, we have to wait a full week until we can get it. But if your Cisco is like in your area to where it's easy to drive to, they have what they call a will call, where you can place an order and go pick it up yourself instead of having it delivered. And then you can get yourself out of those sticky situations. So for us, it's a 2 hour drive each way to get to it, so it's not feasible. But if your Cisco is close, that's going to put you in a much better situation to get out of those, pinches where you kind of didn't prepare for something unexpected.
Hey, Brandon, just a heads up, we've got a hard stop coming in a minute and a half.
Okay. So, Saeed, did that answer the question that you had?
It did, and I appreciate the detail. I just had one last question. I know we only have a minute, but the question I had was because just like you said, there isn't a FiiZ in my area, but there is a Swig place in my area, and I've been there. One of the things that because I remember I'm in different businesses as well, is the way the menu is set up there. And I noticed FiiZ kind of has the same thing where, the drink prices are like $2, but by the time they ring it up, it comes out to be like $6-7. Like, do you guys get customer issues because of that? Because it's not really detailed on the menu saying, okay, this particular drink takes this much syrup or this much puree or whatever, and it builds up the price to be higher. Do you guys have any customer issues with that?
Hey, so
not
the meeting is actually going to just stop in like 20 seconds. So maybe if anybody has additional questions, could they reach out to you, Brandon?
sure.
Okay. All right. And same with that question, Saeed, I'll maybe provide Brandon's email address and you guys can talk or set up an additional time to talk. So thanks everyone for hopping on, and thank you so much, Brandon, for doing this and giving some more insight into your business.
You bet. So